was one of those weeks in fact, one of those days. I had this project that I was desperately trying to get to the finish line. I was out in my wood shop, my garage, and I was working on this project. And, I needed a couple things from Lowe's. My wife was very kind and generous, and he said, hey, I'm going to be out running errands anyway. Let me stop at Lowe's for you. That will give you more time in your wood shop to get this project done. So I sent her the list and didn't think one thing about it. I mean, it was just, we'd been to Lowe's countless times. I've been to Lowe's countless times. But the one thing I didn't think about was I asked her to get, 2 sheets of 1/4-inch plywood. The 4-foot by 8-foot sheets of 1/4-inch plywood. But I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought, Lowe's has loaders, and they could help her load the plywood into my truck. Now, I don't have a full-size truck. I kind of have one of those wannabe trucks, but I've transported a lot of plywood in that truck, and I kind of have a system of how it lays down and how I can get it strapped in. And honestly, I've never had a problem. But again, I've never sent my wife to get plywood. So she goes and she picks up the items from my list, and she actually gets the 2 sheets of 1/4-inch plywood off the shelf and puts it in the car, and she takes it out to the truck. As she was doing that, she was going to find a loader, someone that worked at Lowe's to help. What she discovered that day is Lowe's didn't have any loaders. They were either out sick or out injured or quit. I mean, they literally had no one to help her load, so she didn't know what to do. She got the cart out to the truck, and she was kind of standing there looking at the cart and looking at my truck, and she was just, thinking to herself, I'm going to put one of these sheets either through a window or scratch the side of my husband's truck, or she was like, I'm just going to throw my back out. She was in that space. And then all of a sudden, a guy walked up to her, a guy named Pat. Pat and his wife had driven to Lowe's. They had a cabin up north, and they needed some supplies for their cabin. He had seen my wife standing there kind of looking at this situation, the truck and the cart filled with plywood, and Pat knew that, my wife needed help. He walked up to her and just asked, hey, can I help you? And she was like, that would be great. Pat grabbed the plywood and helped slide it into the truck. He got the straps and tied everything down and looked at my wife and was like, you have a great day. At that moment, my wife had already reached into her purse and grabbed a 20. She just wanted to say thank you to him, and so reached out her hand with that 20 and said, hey, Pat, why don't you just take your wife out for coffee or dessert or lunch on me? And right when she extended her hand to say thank you to him, Pat kind of, not physically backed up, but it felt like he was backing up, and he kind of raised his head and looked at my wife and, emphatically said, I'm a Marine. And this is what we do. He's like, I didn't do this for the money. I didn't even do it for the thank you. It's just what we do. So it kind of left my wife's heart kind of that warm and fuzzy feeling. Pat made his way back into Lowe's to find his wife, and as Kim was getting ready to walk around the side of the truck to get in the front, someone else drove up next to her, and he was in a big truck with a brand new trailer, and someone that she knew, a guy named Dave. David just picked up his trailer for his business and was looking at Kim, and again, he had the big truck, and I have a itty-bitty truck, and he was like, hey, are you driving that all by yourself? And Kim was like, yeah, I wanted to do a favor for my husband, and he's like, let me help. So he unstrapped the wood and put the wood in his trailer. He was like, I'll just take it to Chris, and you just enjoy your day. Next thing I knew, Dave was pulling up in front of my driveway. I was like, what are you doing here? And he was like, hey, saw your wife. She needed some help, so I just loaded the wood in my trailer to help her out and help you out. It's what people do. There's just something about those moments of just random acts of service that just get embedded into your heart. We're in the series titled Set Apart. And what's interesting with this whole idea of being set apart, Jesus actually taught us how to live a life set apart from culture, how to live a life set apart from how other people live. But as Jesus taught us how to be set apart, what he never intended to happen was for us to literally isolate ourselves from culture, isolate ourselves from other people, isolate ourselves from the community, isolate ourselves. That wasn't his intention. In fact, what Jesus taught over and over again is that when you live a life set apart from how culture, how the world lives, actually, it starts to draw people to you. You see, when we live a life reflecting Jesus, it will set us apart, but in a way that's attractive, in a way where people will ask questions, in a way where people will lean in a way that people will kind of scratch their head and it's like, hey, that's different. I want to know more about that. Why do you do what you do? Why do you live that way? You see, Jesus said, hey, be set apart in a way that causes people to lean in. And when you do that, people start asking questions. When they start asking questions, you can connect them with me. You see, that's what being set apart is all about. Well, Jesus taught this over and over and over again. And he wanted to make sure that we understood how mission critical this is for the church. A gathering of imperfect people committed to living a life reflecting, him. And so, in the closing hours of his, time here on this earth, you could feel like there was a urgency within his teaching. There was energy that was pulsing through his veins as he looked at his leadership team, the disciples, and he just wanted to make sure in the last few moments they were extremely clear on what was really important to him. John, who was one of those disciples, years later wrote, this part of the story. And John tells us that, the Passover celebration was about ready to begin. And, Jesus knew that the hour had come to leave this world. Now, John, who was there at that moment, he didn't realize that Jesus was going to leave this world. None of the disciples realized what was going to happen. But John, looking back, said, hey, Jesus fully realized what was taking place. And then John gives us another insight. Again, it's one of these insights that, he gained after the moment. But in the moment, he would never have said this. So afterwards, John goes, hey, and Jesus had loved his disciples, loved us during, his ministry on earth, and now he loved them to the very end. That phrase, very end, is better translated to the fullest extent. Again, in the moment, John would never have said this, wrote this, thought this. But looking back, he's like, hey, you just got to understand. Jesus loved us to the fullest extent. Jesus was the picture of what love truly looks like. And John tells us that it was dinner time, it was supper time, and that the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. So John's telling us exactly which Judas this was, to betray Jesus. Have you ever been betrayed by a close friend? You see, we can't miss the gravity of this statement. We can't miss the intensity of this statement. Remember, Judas and all the disciples had been walking with Jesus for 3+ years. They had spent countless hours with Jesus. They had seen Jesus do miracles. They had heard Jesus teach. They had spent time laughing together, crying together, frustrated together. I mean, they had spent that much life together. They were friends. Have you been betrayed by a friend? Someone who you thought was with you. Someone who you thought was linked arms with you. Someone who you thought would never turn their back on you or walk away from you. Someone that You had no clue until the moment, the day where they took that knife and stabbed you in the back, that moment where all of a sudden you realize that the friendship you thought you had wasn't there. The relationship you thought you had wasn't there. Realize that how close you thought you were, it was all fake. Have you ever been betrayed? Yeah, we all have. And I think betrayal is one of the deepest hurts when it comes to relationships. In fact, one of Shakespeare's most famous lines ever is the line, "Et tu, Brute, and you, Brutus." That famous moment in this play, Julius Caesar, where it's like all of a sudden you realize it's like one of his closest friends had betrayed him. And what I think is so interesting, so difficult to wrap my heart and mind around is Jesus is at the table and Jesus fully is aware of what is happening. We'll see that in a few moments. This isn't going to take Jesus by surprise. And Jesus still sits down to eat with the betrayer, a meal. Man, is there anything more personal than a meal with someone? I'm not talking driving through a fast food line and you each have a sack of hamburgers. I'm talking inviting someone into your home to sit down and have a meal. So let me ask you, is an enemy allowed at your table? Is it? Would you allow an enemy into your house? Would you cook a meal for an enemy? Would you sit down at your dining room table and say, hey, let's eat together, knowing that they've betrayed you, that they've stabbed you in the proverbial back, that they lied about you, that they have shared mistruths about you, that, they're not really for you. I mean, they act like they're for you, but they're not for you. Would you? Would you? I mean, it's easy to say yes, because that's kind of the churchy answer, isn't it? Oh, yeah, yes, I would. But would I? That's a difficult question, isn't it? And Jesus knew, we got to hold on to this. Jesus knew that Judas was a betrayer. No one else around the table knew that, but Jesus did. And John, to highlight this thought, John goes, hey, Jesus knew that the Father had given him all authority over everything and that he had come from God and would return to God. Now this is, we could spend so much time right here, but just let's zone in on this one word, authority. God had given him all authority. All of it. Jesus, the Son of God, all authority from God the Father. He could have just snapped his fingers and just wiped Judas out. He could have turned Judas into, a parakeet. I don't know, right? Like all authority. Jesus, there's a whole list of things. If you had all authority, what would you want to do to Judas? There's a list of things. If I had all authority in all of my humanity, I would want to do to a betrayer. And John's like, hey, he has all authority. And you see, that one statement not only connects to Judas the betrayer, but it connects to what Jesus does next. Because what Jesus does next would have sent, just shockwaves through everyone in that room. Silence would have been deafening as they tried to wrap their mind and their hearts around what they were seeing with their eyes. In fact, in that moment, Jesus gets up from the table. He takes off his robe and he wraps a towel around his waist and he pours water into a basin. They would have all understood what he was doing there. Every one of them understood what all of this meant. All of them fully grasped and embraced the custom of that day. What was supposed to take place before the meal was eaten, as they would enter into a home. And that's why silence would have been deafening. That's why all of them would have been sitting there, eyes wide open, staring at Jesus, trying to figure out, no, Jesus can't be doing what it looks like he is about ready to do. And Jesus, well, he begins to wash the disciples' feet. Now, let's take a quick time out there. I got a foot issue. This is just sharing. I don't like anyone touching my feet. I just don't. My wife, don't touch my feet. My kids know, don't touch my feet. I mean, doctor, don't touch my feet. Like, just, my feet are just, like, I don't know what it is. I'm sure there's a psychological condition. I'm sure maybe you know my condition. I have it. I just don't, no one, like, just don't touch my feet. And I'm not, here's the thing here, and you're going to thank me here in just a second. I'm not going to touch your feet. See, look at that. It's mutual, like agreement there. Like, I won't touch your feet, which would be awkward, and don't touch my feet. There's just something about feet. And if you're a parent, here's what you know about feet. The feet of children, no matter the gender and no matter the age, they smell horrendous, don't they? Especially if you have kids in sports. Both of my girls played soccer throughout all of their schooling. My youngest still is playing soccer. And here's what we know about their soccer cleats. And it doesn't matter the sport. It's any sports shoe. But their soccer cleats have a stench, a stank to them that's beyond me. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I got in my truck. I opened my truck. And right when I was opening the door, there was a stank that came wafting out of my truck. It was horrendous. And I was like, oh my, what? Something died in my truck, only to find my youngest, Claire's soccer shoes that were left in my back seat. For days, I had to drive around everywhere with the windows down, just trying to get some air circulation to get that stank out of it. And then someone told us, I mean, this is game changer. Someone told us about these things called stink sticks. Seriously, Google them, go to Amazon, stink sticks, and you stick them in your kids' shoes and no more smell. And it was a miracle. They work now. I mean, now it doesn't matter anymore. But there's just something about feet, and especially stinky feet. And for the disciples, well, for everyone living in that time period, they wore sandals and they walked everywhere. Walked everywhere. Their feet were always cracked and dry and dirty and muddy and fungus. Oh, I can't back up the fungus thing. But I mean, they walked everywhere in sandals everywhere. Their feet were disgusting. And Jesus gets up from the table and starts to wash their nasty, dirty, dusty, stanky feet. And he grabs the towel. I mean, this towel would have been used on not just 1 foot or 2 feet, all 24 of them. And he started to scrub them. You see, what was customary during this time period is the servant on the lowest totem or rung of the ladder, the lowest of all the servants, well, that servant would have washed the guests' feet. This was customary. What was unthinkable, unimaginable, was for someone like Jesus, a rabbi, to ever wash someone's feet. In fact, it would have been unthinkable for the disciples to wash anyone's feet. This was for the lowest of the low servants. That was their job. And they couldn't even imagine Jesus scrubbing their nasty feet. I mean, John doesn't record that Jesus says anything in this moment. All John tells us is he gets up from the table, takes off his outer robe, grabs that towel, grabs a basin, and starts scrubbing them. Again, the silence would have been deafening. And Jesus was painting such a powerful picture that actions are louder than words. Actions are louder than words. And we know this. I mean, words are important. I mean, saying I love you to your spouse, saying I love you to your kids, saying I love you to a friend, saying I love you to a family member, right? That's important. You should use those words. But an act of love, always, always greater. Always greater. So let me ask you, does dirt stop you from serving? I mean, you name the dirt, it's up to you. You name the type of dirt, it's up to you. But does a dirty situation, I mean, dirt could be betrayal. Dirt could be someone who's lied about you. Dirt could be someone who says they're going to do something and they just don't do it. Dirt could be one of those people that keeps on trying to undercut you. Dirt could be one of those things that person that keeps saying those passive aggressive comments, but then they laugh and they're like, haha, that's funny. And you're like, it's not funny. And well, everyone knows that it's not funny. I mean, you can define what dirt is, but the question is still the question. Does dirt stop you from serving others? Is dirt just one of those things that you think is below you? Like, you know that you need a help, but you're not going to help doing that stuff because that's just below you. Someone else can do that. And that's dirt. Do you have what kind of rungs of what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do? And you just kind of think other people can do that stuff. You're just not. And Jesus starts scrubbing all over their feet, and he's making his way around the circle, and all of a sudden he comes to Peter, and Peter says to Jesus, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? And Jesus just comes right back and says, you don't understand. I mean, you can just feel Jesus at this moment. I mean, Peter was a person that spoke first all the time. At this moment, I don't think Jesus waited one breath. I mean, Peter just started to in on Jesus, and Jesus was like, hey, you don't understand, Peter. You don't understand what I am doing. But someday, one day, Peter, you will. And one day, the rest of you will. One day, John, you will. One day. And then Peter, with all of that just emphatic tension building up within him, he goes, no, you'll never wash my feet. Jesus, the rest of them have let you wash their feet. Those guys, they said, okay, fine, but hey, I'm the one. You're never going to wash my feet. And well, Jesus comes back, he goes, unless I wash you, you won't belong to me. That would have been something. Jesus like, hey, I'm going to make it really clear to you. Unless I wash, you won't belong. That my act of service of what I'm going to do right now is that critical, that important. It's a game changer. And Peter comes back to Jesus and he says, hey, Jesus, then wash my hands and head as well, Lord, as not just my feet. He's like, well, okay, if this is about belonging, then wash everything. And Jesus goes, well, hey, Peter. And I think at this point, he's getting eye contact with everyone around the table. He says, hey, a person who is bathed all over does not need to be washed except for the feet to be entirely clean. And you disciples are clean, but not all of you. Remember, John's writing this years later. In the moment, he had no idea what Jesus was talking about. Peter had no idea what Jesus was talking about in this moment. I mean, they had no idea. But Jesus did. And Judas did. In fact, years later, when John is recording this moment, the story, John just wants to make sure everyone understood what Jesus meant by this. And he writes, he goes, for Jesus knew who would betray him. It didn't shock Jesus. It didn't take Jesus by surprise. He wasn't caught off guard. John's like, hey, Jesus knew at dinner time, Judas was going to betray him. Jesus knew as he was scrubbing his feet, looking him in the eyes, Jesus knew. And John goes, and that's what he meant when he said, not all of you are clean. So, Jesus, he served the betrayer. That's what Jesus did. He ate a meal with them, and he scrubbed his feet. So, here's a question you need to wrestle with. Who are you willing to serve? Who are you willing to serve? You see, that's the question that you got to wrestle with. I mean, Jesus just said, okay, I serve the betrayer, the one who is going to turn me in to be killed. Who are you going to serve? It's almost like Jesus is saying, hey, you have no excuses. That person who you don't like, that person who's hurt you, that person who's betrayed you, that person who's gossiped about you, that person who has, you fill in the blank. It's like you have no excuses. Who are you? Who are you? And John tells us that after he was done washing their feet, he put on his robe again and sat down and asked, now, do you understand what I'm doing? Of course, they didn't understand. I mean, they just didn't. Jesus knew they didn't fully understand. I mean, they were going to understand. I mean, just within hours, they were going to start to really understand. And Jesus is like, hey, I'm just going to explain it to you. He goes, hey, you call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, because that's what I am. And then Jesus goes, and since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, he goes, you ought to wash each other's feet. This phrase, each other, is this Greek word alelon, which means one another. And this is what Jesus was saying. He goes, if I can do this for you, you can do this for one another, including betrayers, including liars, including cheats, including, again, Jesus is like, you fill in the blank. He goes, I did this for you. Now, who are you going to serve? Who are you going to serve? And to make sure that he was remember, Jesus was trying to be so clear in his urgency of what he was teaching. He said, hey, I've given you an example to follow. Now do as I have done to you. It's this simple. Here's the example. Now do. And this applies to everything Jesus taught. He goes, hey, this is an example. Follow. If you want to know what it means to be a Jesus follower, we say it this way, to love like Jesus and live like Jesus and to lead like Jesus and to leave behind what Jesus left behind. And that's to have more people that you're pouring into to love, live, and lead like Jesus. This is the formula. Jesus sets an example and do what being a Christ follower, a Jesus follower is all about. Following Jesus' example and doing. So, how? 3 quick thoughts. And these aren't rocket science. You all get all of these. First, see a need, meet a need. That's simple. See a need, meet it. I mean, that's why I love the story about Pat and Dave. They saw a need, they just met it. They served my wife. I mean, just stepped up and served in such a way. We can do this every day. Every day. See a need, meet it. Number 2, don't wait to be asked. Don't wait. Just see it. You see it? Step in. Serve. Ask questions later. Step in and serve. And third one is step up and get dirty. Step up and get dirty. It's okay. Why? Why? Because Jesus did it. That's why. He set an example. He's like, follow me. What does following Jesus look like? Follow his example and do. So, across all of our churches, we're always looking for people that want to step up and serve with us. We just do. Like, if you can smile, we need you. Be part of our cafe teams or stand at our doors. If you're great around kids or even kind of great around kids, Kids Rock team. Our Velocity Student Ministries, they need people who want to walk with teenagers because I tell you, our teenagers are leading at a high level and we need other leaders leading with them as they help the church become what God has designed it to be. Do you have a technical expertise? Do you have good singing or an instrument? I mean, you name it. Like, our churches are made up of people who are serving. And so we're always saying, hey, come serve with us. Be part of our team. Be part of what God is doing. And all you have to do is if you just text the word serve to 833-709-0962, we will get you part of serving with us. We're entering into this holiday season and we're launching Christmas Wish. And we have such a great opportunity for you to help serve people locally in our local communities and globally. Locally, we're partnering with CYS, and it's such a great opportunity for us to will buy gifts and give gifts to kids in foster care. And so you can grab one of these envelopes and there's a child's name and age and the instructions are here, and just go Christmas shopping and buy the presents and drop them off at your campus, and we'll get them out and delivered. For our global impact, we're partnering with Compassion International, and you can grab one of these ornaments. And Compassion is such a great, great organization that's helping kids and families around the world. And so you can grab one of these, and maybe the one you grab is about a newborn care package. Maybe this one is about Bibles. This one's about a goat. Like, there's so many different things you can do. Again, this is just acts of service. In Elk County, we're partnering with CAPC and CYS, and they need coats and clothing right now. So you know what you could do? Just go through your closet. I'm not talking the ripped, tattered, stain-filled clothes, but you have clothes and coats you have not worn in seasons. Get your best stuff that you're not wearing, put them in bags, take them to your campus, and guess what? We will sort them and get them up to Elk County and get them into the hands of CAPC and CYS that can mobilize our clothing, our coats, to help get them into kids and families that desperately have need. And guess what you can do? Give financially. That's what you can do. Just give. Just give. Partner with us financially as we serve our communities. All you have to do is text the word WISH to 833-709-0962, and you can get more information there. Remember, we keep walking through the dirt, and Jesus continues to love us. So let's get dirty. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's serve our churches. Let's serve our communities. Let's serve people we know and people we don't know. And let's follow Jesus' example. Because remember, the greatest act of service took place when Jesus died on the cross for you and for me. Let's pray. Lord, I just thank you for what you are doing. I pray that we will continue to be churches filled with people that are rolling up their sleeves, willing to get dirty, to follow your example, to serve people. Because we grasp the ultimate act of love and service when you crawled on that cross for me, for everyone. And that is what we celebrate. In your name I pray. Amen.